Beacon Press Audio presents, Sincerely, Your Autistic Child, What People on the Autism Spectrum Wish Their Parents Knew About Growing Up, Acceptance and Identity. Edited by Sharon Davenport, Emily Page Ballou, and Morenike Giwu Onaiwu. This audiobook is narrated by Stephanie Mounce, published by Beacon Press Audio 2020. Forward. A couple of years ago, I was asked to speak to a group of early education students at a local college. They were studying specialized teaching methodologies for autistic students and, after bringing in an autistic speaker, their professor wanted to hear from a parent. After I spoke, I opened the floor to questions. There was one I will never forget. "How did you feel?" a student asked, "when your daughter was first diagnosed with autism?" I took a deep breath and I answered honestly. "I was terrified," I said. I sobbed. I retched over a toilet bowl. Because of everything that I thought that I knew about autism, I could not imagine that there was any real hope of a future for her. I took another deep breath before I continued. Because, you see, I didn't know any better. I didn't yet know that the terrifying and damaging rhetoric out there about autism wasn't going to be our reality. Desperate to find help for my newly diagnosed daughter, I turned to other parents, doctors, researchers, therapists, anyone who cared for or worked with autistic individuals. While in some cases, their experiences were helpful, the truth was that no matter how much or how hard they'd studied, how renowned their work or esteemed their opinions, they could still only offer the perspective I already had, that of a neurotypical person making assumptions about the autistic experience from the outside in. Some of the so-called experts sold outrageous myths as truisms, backed by the long, outdated idea that in order to exist, a human trait must be expressed only in a way that is familiar and recognizable to neurotypicals, to wit, intelligence measured only by language-rich tests, the existence of empathy determined only by its method of delivery, theory of mind proven by a test so flawed that it's not even wrong. It soon became obvious that the current autism zeitgeist was off the mark, so I turned to the experts. The actual ones. I searched for autistic people who were able, in one way or another, to share their stories. As it turns out, they weren't hard to find. In fact, they were, and are, everywhere. Some of the folks I found were verbal, some were non-speaking. Some used electronic devices to communicate. Some were able, after having spent years, as my friend Barb Rettenbach likes to say, disguised as poor thinkers, to type their thoughts. I yearned to hear everything they had to say. More than anything, I longed to understand my daughter's experience, not from the outside looking in, but from the inside looking out. It was on Brooke's 5th birthday that I published a post called The Gift of Perspective. It was only the second post that I ever wrote on my then brand new blog, A Diary of a Mom. In it, I quoted an autistic woman who had anonymously published an article ahead of April, well known at the time as Autism Awareness Month. She wrote, "Don't pity me or try to cure or change me. If you could live in my head for just one day, you might weep at how much beauty I perceive in the world with my exquisite senses. I would not trade one small bit of that beauty, as overwhelming and powerful as it can be, for normalcy." "I always feel so privileged," I wrote in response, "to get glimpses into the minds and hearts of people who have lived through this. When someone says, 'I wouldn't change it for the world,' well, what an amazing reminder that every bit of this struggle, both real and perceived, is subject to perception." My daughter was 5 when I wrote those words. She had little to no novel language. Her life was often frustrating and overwhelming and painful and hard. It was a life-changing moment. Over the years, I have become increasingly grateful to those who give so generously of their time and precious energy to share some of the most intimate details of their lives in the name of a better world for their younger brethren. I don't know what I would have done without their insight, their guidance, and their friendship. I cannot imagine the parent I would be today without having had their help in stripping away my own assumptions, my own ableism, and my deeply ingrained neurotypical bias in order to understand and respect my child's inner life. Their experiences may not be an exact match with hers. Some may not even come close. But always, always, there is invaluable insight to be gained from their writing, a glimpse of what it means to be autistic in a predominantly neurotypical world. There is no greater resource for neurotypical parents of autistic children than the members of their own community. When parents come to me terrified, convinced there is no viable future for their precious children, this is where I send them, to those who not only wait to welcome our children with open arms, but who so willingly guide us as we make our way along this winding, rocky, beautiful path together. They know, like no one else possibly can, of what they speak. Jess Wilson. Letter from the Editors. When we first set out to publish What Every Autistic Girl Wishes Her Parents Knew under our imprint, Dragon Bee Press, it was during a time in which there seemed to be a hopeless division between autistic adults and non-autistic parents. The relationship between autistic adults and parents of autistic kids has in the past been marked by misunderstanding and lack of a common language and sense of possibility for the lives of autistic kids, since many of us had grown up in a time period in which autistic and intellectually/developmentally disabled youth were often segregated in school, institutionalized, and undiagnosed, or our disabilities treated with shame and hidden sometimes even from us. Many parents of newly diagnosed young people had either never known or never known that they'd known other autistic people or what our lives could look like from early childhood all the way to later adulthood. As such, they didn't understand how to relate their own autistic kids to autistic adults, including strangers on the internet, asking them to parent differently. But as a community of autistic people who were diagnosed or identified both early and later in life ourselves, who have found community and solidarity in each other, in many ways, members of our organization, AWN, are uniquely equipped to reach out and let parents know that many of the most important sources of strength and support for building a good life were almost never a particular kind of therapy or clinical intervention. Instead, we draw strength from knowing that we are accepted by the people in our lives, the recognition of our full humanity, and chances to be genuinely included in the world around us. With increasing recognition over the years of the historic underdiagnosis of certain segments of the community, such as autistic women and girls, came an increase in awareness that autistic people themselves could actually have children. Many parents of autistic kids were actually autistic, but undiagnosed. In fact, several of our own authors are not just autistic people, but are parents, biological or adoptive, of autistic children themselves. And their vital knowledge is shaped not only by their own autistic childhoods, but by their experiences as parents. Another issue we knew we needed to address with the anthology republication is the increasing affirmation of gender diversity within the autistic community. When AWN was founded as the Autism Women's Network, and when we first conceived of the original anthology, our organization was dedicated to addressing the disparities in recognition, diagnosis, and social support faced by autistic women and girls in a medical and professional culture that often presented the stereotype of a nonverbal, young, white boy as the face of what autism meant, actively erasing and obscuring the existence and experiences of autistic girls and adult women. Current research suggests that people on the autism spectrum demonstrate a diverse range of gender expression and sexual orientation. It is also true that the people who have gone underserved and unrecognized.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?